Are we in
Are we
the
in a
middle of a
mating
mating
crisis?
crisis?
We probably are, but the answer for why is so, in my opinion, is so much more boring than people make it out to be. I think that when people talk about a mating crisis, they're like, we've lost the ability for men and women to communicate with each other, and men are becoming too feminine to get laid, and microplastics are drying up our sperm reserves, and blah, blah, blah. I think that the actual answer is a lot more boring. And I think the actual answer is that given the ability to work jobs and like have autonomy over their lives, women don't want to choose to be like locked away as moms at like 18, 19, 20 years old. That's a really hard sell. Like if you were to tell men that like, hey, listen, when you turn 21, I need you to take like 7 years off your career building years to just like be a father and like do that and then maybe go back to work. Like no, like almost no man would take that choice. Be like, fuck that. I'm like, these are the best working years, fucking years, every year of my life. Why would I ever do that? And lo and behold, kind of with the education thing, there's a lot of stuff. This is why I always fight when people are like, oh, biology, men and women are different. We are different to some extent, but we're way more we have way more in common than we think. And I think for a long time, the idea is like a woman doesn't want to go to school, doesn't want to work a job, doesn't want to have recreational sex. Like women don't want to do any of these things. Like that's biologically hardwired. But the reality is, if you tweak like a couple things, now all of a sudden we're like, you know what? I do want to work a job. I do want to travel. I do want to have freedom. I do want to be able to fuck guys and not have kids. So like women are enjoying that kind of like freedom. And that's a Pandora's box that when you open it, it's never going back. So anybody that tells you, well, the solution is we need to get rid of birth control, that's dumb. We're past that point, right? So now the issue that you're contending with is life offers you so much fun and excitement at your fingertips, very easy to access, very cool, very awesome. Children in a family are a lot of work. There's a lot of friction. There's a lot of friction in even finding a guy or a woman that you want to marry, right? Then there's even more friction about setting up the family. Then there's even more friction about maintaining the family and doing the growth, right? That having the opportunity to do that versus all of this other freedom, it's not surprising to me that more and more people are opting in this direction. And I'm pretty sure that that's a pattern that every single country in the developmental history of the planet has followed. As your country becomes more industrialized, as women gain access to more opportunity, that the number of children plummets. And in every single industrialized country in the world, I think except for like Israel, I think every other country, the birth rate is below replacement. And yeah.
Now the question becomes that is that like money where there is something really real there that you can get, but that people are framing it wrong and not that's not leading them to happiness? Because I have a base assumption that I think the wall, as they call it, where a woman will get to, let's say, partner at her law firm. She's 39,
Okay.
hasn't had kids yet. And all of a sudden she's like, why am I working this hard? That feels, I haven't looked at the studies or anything, but that feels intuitively correct to me from a biological standpoint, where at
Maybe.
some point there's a hole in my heart for kids.
Hmm.
Now, maybe I'm a more effeminate man. I think that would be a very fair characterization. So I might be more prone to that than the next guy. But I would say that as a default, when I just look at it from an evolutionary perspective, a woman is going to have evolutionary winds at her back, pushing her to want a child.
I think so obviously this gets hard, especially when we're in Evo psych territory. I think the thing you have to be careful when we say like evolutionarily is there might there sometimes triggers can be there in very unobvious ways. And it might be the fact that there is not as much an evolutionary push as we might otherwise think. So, for instance, like here's a question I'm going to answer for you because I know your answer. If I were to ask you, do you think that evolutionarily we're supposed to be obese? The answer is obviously no. But then if you look, it's like, well, hold on. We love sugar so much. Why? Well, the reality is, way back in the days of our hunter-gathering time periods, 8,000, 9,000, 10,000 BC and earlier, that drive to consume sugary things, that was really good because you don't find that many of them in the wilderness. When you find it, you want to eat it, and it's good. Your body's going to hold on to those calories as well as it can, but whatever. But who cares? That trigger can't possibly do anything bad to you. But evolution can't predict the future. We didn't know we would have mass carbs, farming, all this stuff available to us. And now that drive gets tripped really hard when we're provided with those foods to eat constantly. I think when it comes to women and wanting to have children, I don't know if you need that like evolutionary kick at like 30, because my guess is going to be when you go back in time, men and women, you actually know this because if you compare like wealthy people to poor people, men and women with nothing to do will fuck and make kids. I don't know if you need a push for it. I don't know if you need an evolutionary drive for it. I don't know if that's super hardwired biology. My guess is if you go back in time, like a 23-year-old woman is not like, man, I hope my desire for children kicks in soon. There probably isn't much to do, so they're just fucking all the time. That'd be my guess.
Well, so that to me is the evolutionary push.
Sure.
So
Well, what I'm saying is like when somebody is like 30 or 40, I don't know if like a woman feeling like I don't have kids, I don't know if that's like a strong like, oh my God, my biological clock ticked past 12 o'clock and now I feel bad. Or if it's just like society is like, don't you want kids? Shouldn't you have kids? And you've seen enough baby movies and you're like, fuck. I don't know what the answer is. I'm just saying I could see it being like one way or the other. Like if somebody told me that there was no internal push to have children, I would believe it. If that was a fact, I would believe it because you probably don't need that push because everybody's fucking as soon as they turn whatever teen year anyway, you know? But I could see it going either way, yeah.
But if you look at the sex rates, which is the one sort of piece of data that I think I have a handle on, which is that at least leading up to COVID, it was declining. I've heard some conflicting data as to whether now it's going back up or if it's gone down more. But let's assume that it's renormalizing. But we had like that tremendous dip. And one of the things that I think led to that certainly is the choice. There's just more options. And so to your point, if previously women were artificially kept out of a lot of things, then motherhood was a very compelling thing that they could do with their life, which gave them fulfillment and gave them a sense of meaning and purpose and all of that. And so it makes all the sense in the world that they would pursue that. But then as your options widen, especially if you feel like, oh, I can wait, but then the stats on that are horrible. And it really starts declining, I think, like after 30, where even though you can conceive in your 40s, now you're talking IVF, most people, that's not going to work. So you create a scenario. Basically, I'm going to keep seeing if I can make this thesis work out because this feels intuitively correct, but I don't have enough data. But I think it's just like money, where it is something that I get why people pursue, because you want to, like even for guys, you want to be promiscuous, you want to run around, you want to not have kids, you want to play the game, you want to, get rich, have a lot of sex, et cetera, et cetera. But then at some point you realize, ooh, wait a second, there is a hole in my heart is how I think about it. That hasn't been filled. And so that was something I thought a lot about. Okay, so that's sort of the thesis there, but I don't want to get too far afield. The real question that I want to ask is, going back to the mating crisis and men, how much do you think of if we're saying being male, typically male is bad and it's toxic, and so we're sort of culturally beating that out of men. We're giving them, I think they're called sedations. In researching you, I was introduced to that term. I had not heard that before. But
Isn't it called like
whether
pornography
it's
and stuff?
yeah,
Okay.
porn, video games, whatever, things that make them not care to pursue it. I'll throw in a little bit of Me Too in terms of the fear of just making the approach and looking like an asshole and getting blasted. So you've got this cocktail of things that makes guys more reticent to pursue that. Do you think that that's real, that we do have that contributing to this? So it isn't just that women have additional choices. It's also that men are, and I think this plays out twofold. Men don't have as strong of an impetus to pursue women, and we're not doing anything culturally to say, hey, you need to get good at this. And then two, that there's a bit of, if men are really failing in some of the ways that it seems like they're failing, and hypergamy is real, where women just have a natural proclivity to date across or up, then it's like they need men to be better, and they need men to perform well and to be rising at least at the same rate that women are rising. Does that cocktail feel right, or do you think I'm off on something?
I don't think I conceptualize all of it in exactly the same way, but there's probably a lot of ways that I conceptualize it that would probably map onto what you're saying. There's a lot of thoughts that I have. There's a lot of thoughts I have when it comes to dating and sex that I almost feel like I'm on an island on these things. Like it feels like, at least in like the spaces that talk about it, I feel like I don't hear much. I thought a lot about this because I feel like feel very comfortable around women. I've always felt comfortable like talking to women and doing all of that. And I try to think a lot like where did this come from? And I think in some ways the answer is very illuminating. Other ways the answer is very disappointing. When I grew up, I had a lot of friends that were girls. And I think I took that for granted growing up, especially because my high school was an all boys high school. So I would think, if anything, I'm like at a big disadvantage. But through some incredibly random stroke of luck, when I was 14, 15, there happened to be a girl that lived near me. And my dad had just moved away. I wasn't old enough yet for a driver's license. Even if I was, I couldn't afford a car. And she ended up being my ride to school. And because I was her ride to school, I was like her little, basically, like I was trapped with her because I would go to school. It was a 30 minute drive. And then once she dropped me off at school and she went to school, she went to Marion High School, it's an all girls high school. She would come pick me up, but she would want to hang out with her friends and stuff. So I would basically be roped along, always hanging out with her and then like her 4 or 5 friends. And so from a very early age, like I've always just been like talking to women, interacting with women. I think I dated like 3 different women in that group of friends, but not because I was like some Riz master that read like all the perfect red pill stuff, but just because I happened to spend a lot of time around women. So it kind of made sense.
What were you picking up on though that let you be successful?
I think it's just an experience thing. Like you just like start talking to women and it's just like whatever, you know? Like
That's
it's like how do you
tremendously terrible advice, Destiny.
I
Come
know.
on.
So
Come
the
on.
thing that I always tell people is like that, yeah, like the best time to learn how to like deal with women is like 10 years ago when you were in high school.
But
Because
how
like if
do you deal with women? Like, what was the punchline? Is it all intuitive for you and you literally don't know exactly what you're doing?
in terms of like actual interactions, there's a lot of things that I don't know. There's so many like random little things. Here's a couple that come to mind. I drew this graph on my stream a while ago. When people talk about like the balance between masculinity and femininity, it's like the ultimate man is like 100 masculine, like 5 feminine, and the ultimate woman is like 100 feminine, like 5 masculine. In my opinion, I think the best type of people, like the best man is like 100 masculine, like 90 feminine. And the best woman is like 100 feminine, like 90 masculine. When I think of like my way of like dealing with women, or if I think of like why people are attracted to me, like I think that's because I have a very contrasting set of characteristics. Like in one sense, there are some things I can do that some people would characterize as like hyper masculine, like screaming at people online, getting very animated, blah, blah, blah. And to be able to go from doing that to like playing a nice song on my piano or like hugging and playing with like your cat or dog, like that contrast in traits is, I can tell when I interact with people that that's a really big deal for some people. They really like the aspects of me that are masculine and they really like the aspects of me that are feminine. But when you go into like the red pill spaces, they say things like, oh, like feminine traits will turn a woman off completely. If you ever cry in front of a woman, she'll leave you immediately. And I know from personal experience that like if I cry in front of a woman, she's gonna stay with me forever because like, oh my God, that's such a special moment that like only I get to see, blah, blah, blah. So that balance between like feminine and masculine traits is really important. Having like contrasting characters and personalities. That's like one aspect. A second aspect that I notice, and this is just a good people skill, period. This manipulation strategy is so good, it works on me, even if I know somebody's doing it. Everybody at the end of the day just wants somebody to like listen to them and understand them. If you're willing to just like sit back, listen to people, ask enough questions to like let them kind of like talk about themselves and like, you know, flesh out their lives, really lame questions like, how did that make you feel? For a lot of people, they've like never heard another person genuinely interested in like asking a question like this, and it feels so good to have somebody care about it like that and to share those things. Like those are the types of things I'm thinking about when I'm like, if I'm like trying to get a woman to like me, or I'm trying to pick somebody up or whatever. These are the strategies. It's never like the red pill, like ultra masculine games. It's usually things to do with like communication or making somebody feel like seen or heard. But I'll say on the back end, it is important that I have like that masculine aspect too, because I'm not just here to be like a little simp beta bitch. Like I'm going to ask you how you genuinely feel about something, and then I might make fun of you a little bit for it, but you know I don't actually hate you for it, right? Like that's like the balance that I think of. There's probably like other things that I employ too, but like all of these things are like people skills. Oh, I will say this, as funny and stereotypical as it is, I'm sure this actually had a lot of impact on how I dealt with people. Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People, that should probably be like a must-read book for like every single person in existence. There's a lot of really good like basic people skills. I think I learned like I think I read that in like 7th grade. Yeah, but
What were some key takeaways?
fuck, don't ask me that. I don't remember. What I remember was I remember reading the book and I remember trying some of the things on people in real life and being surprised. But I don't want to quote anything in particular because now I'm worried that it wasn't in the book.
Yeah,
but like
no.
I remember, for instance, like there were some kids, I did gymnastics growing up. And I know that there was like a kid that like really fucking didn't like me for whatever reason. And I want to say I picked this up as it was in that book. I think it had to do with like if you're kind to people, if you compliment people, they cannot be mean to you. it is impossible that if somebody's treating you like shit and you're like, I'm sorry, dude, I legit, I fucked up. Like, you're right. They can't be mean to you anymore. It's impossible to do it. And I remember like using that, and I got that kid to like me a lot. Little strategies like asking people for help. It's like the most flattering thing in the world. If you've got a coworker that fucking hates you and whatever, and you're like, hey, listen, like, you're really good at this. Can you show me how to do this? Like, it just makes people feel like so good to be like, yeah, I can help you with, like, you know. Yeah, there was a lot in like getting people to compete with each other. Yeah, I don't remember everything. I just remember reading it in I think grade school and high school and trying to incorporate a lot of that into how I deal with people. Yeah.
If you like that clip, check out another powerful clip right here, and I'll see you there.